Well, welcome to this episode of Divine Discourse. My name is Dr. Irby Valdez, and I am here with my lovely wife and licensed professional counselor and therapist, Miss Maricruz Valdez. Mari, thank you for being here with us this evening.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Well, you have a private practice, and you've been working as a professional counselor for some time. How long have you been doing that?
As a professional counselor, 11 years.
11 years?
And I work as a school counselor. And then in my private practice, this is my fourth year.
Fourth year. And it's called Possible Counseling. And so you work with a lot of individuals and couples and families and so forth. And you also have a certification in biblical counseling. What is the difference between a standard LPC and one who has this biblical bent to them, where it's this certification of biblical counseling? How is that different?
Well, the LPC is the requirements that you need in order to have a private practice through the government, state. So that's all the qualifications. The biblical counseling is to know how to incorporate the Bible in sessions.
Okay.
And counseling. It's like techniques and things, how to interpret or how to incorporate the Bible.
So somebody comes to you, they're going to receive a biblical perspective on
Yes.
on counseling.
Yeah, and there is a little bit difference, between a Christian counselor and a biblical counselor. I can be a Christian just because I believe in Christ, but I'm not going to be using the Bible as the authority.
As a method, or
Yes.
like you says, the authority. Gotcha.
Yeah, so the biblical counselor is the ones that it says, here's the Bible, whether I like it or not, I have to use it.
Yeah.
And it's,
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. Well, today we're going to talk about anxiety and depression, and I'm guessing that these are two very common and well-spoken areas in your field. So how common are these two conditions in your practice? When you look at the people you work with, how common are these two issues in your practice and in your expertise, anxiety and depression?
They are very, very common. I would say probably 80 to 90% of my clients that they come, they have either anxiety or depression plus something else. But that is kind of like the root problem.
Okay.
Either anxiety or depression, but it's very, very common.
Well, today we're going to discuss two phrases that are common to these two disorders. The first phrase is, what if? And the second phrase is, if only. What if and if only. So what if deals with the side of anxiety, and it's the tendency to be anxious about those what ifs in life. What if they don't like me? What if I don't get the job? Or what if this happens? What if that happens? And it deals with the unknown and these uncontrollable issues. The what ifs, those are nearly impossible to deal with. So I wanted to have a good conversation with you about that, because I think the what ifs and anxiety deals with our struggles with the future things, future possibilities. And then the second phrase, if only, deals with the side of depression, which is where we may look back at things and look at our life and maybe things that have happened to us, maybe trauma, past trauma and so forth, and we may feel regret or sorrow, and it may impact us in a negative way. And this idea of if only really deals with our struggles with the past. So what if, the possibilities of the future that can impact our anxiety, and if only, those ideas of dealing with past issues that deals with our struggles with the past. Mm-hmm. And so let's start with this what if. When it comes to anxiety, what do you think are the most common effects and the mistakes that you see people making in their lives when it comes to not only anxiety, but this idea of what if? What would you say?
Well, so what if, it is a mindset that is set in the future, right? And something very important about the mind or the brain of the human, the mind does not recognize if it's present, past, or future. That's why the PTSD, people that they suffer, they experience physical symptoms just by remember things, like if they were in the present. So that's what is so, the anxiety. What if in their mind is reality and they are living it? For example, if I have a lemon, right? I cut it out and I give it to you, and I said, okay, squish that lemon, drink that juice. Immediately, think about it. Right now, you're thinking about
How
what
sour it is,
and
and
everything.
my eyes are
you're-
going to water.
And
Yeah.
you feel it sometimes, right? You
Yeah.
can feel it. So that is anxiety. Anxiety is the going to the future, and usually our mind is wired to the worst possible scenario. And it was like that because people before, they need to be aware of dangers. You know, what if
A saber-toothed tiger is lying for
yes.
me, and wait.
So I
and-
need to look, I need to see. So it's consistently, but we were now made to live in this consistent worry about, you know, what if, what if. So the mind does not have that ability. So people, they suffer with anxiety, and then there's different types of anxiety, you know, and but people that they are diagnosed, that they are clinical diagnosed with the anxiety, and their mind is living it. It has the symptoms. We have the panic attacks, and we have the anxiety attacks. 95% people that they have it the first time, they end up in the ER because they feel that they are having a heart attack. It's real. The symptoms are real. They don't have anything. Everything, the organs, everything is okay. So usually what doctors do, they already know it's an anxiety. Okay, go home and go find a therapist and try to work it.
So what you're dealing with are physiological responses to mental, maybe images or ideas or thoughts, right? So like you said, it's kind of like this war zone of the mind. So, but you said something that's important to me because, like you said, it was important. Like let's say back in the times when people would go hunting, they'd have to say, okay, what if this? What if it rains? What if I get caught in a storm? Or what if we lose our way? So there's this part where, what would you say to a person that says, okay, I got to be prepared. I got to be considering the things that may happen tomorrow. So I've got to consider these possibilities, but yet how do we keep from it consuming us?
I think it is the line between, yes, I need to be prepared and I need to be cautious and, you know, responsible versus I'm going to live in fear. The anxiety, it's that consistent fear, worry, you know, about something coming or something that could happen. And it's not healthy, you know. There's going to be a lot of, yes, and I think that is going to be the difference between stress and anxiety. And then we can talk a little bit more about that. What is the difference? But an anxiety, it's a mental state. It's something within the brain, you know, that it's, and it's hard for the people that suffer anxiety just to not think about it. It is hard. It is a condition that it needs to be treated, and it depends what type and how severe is. You know, some people it's just with what I offer is called psychotherapy. It's the talking, the going and trying different skills. But there are some people that it's not enough that they need something else, medication. Have clients that they go and they have these treatments with, you know, that they shock the brain. And so there's so many else treatments that, you know, that it depends. It's very unique and depends on the individual.
Yeah, I know that I think most of us who've lived long enough, I think we've all had our share of experiences with anxiety. I think that one of the things that I learned to deal with, and yes, I also went to counseling, to therapy, you know, years ago, to really help with some of these issues, where how realistic, you know, are some of these scenarios, you know, like, okay, how realistic is it? I'll give you an example. When we start looking, you know, when we start looking at the news, we start looking at all the wars and all the stuff, the famines and the diseases and the viruses and another potential outbreak and this, it's almost like 99% just horrible news. And one of the things that I learned, especially right now with social media and how consumed we are, if the news does it because that's what sells. If you put you know, hey, at 6 o'clock today, tune in to this channel, and we're going to tell you a story about a kitten getting rescued from a tree. You know, that's a nice story, but that's not what's going to garner attention. It's going to be about, you know, the hard stuff. You know, tune in. You know, there was this break-in, or there was this fire, or there was this massive earthquake or something, and then people tune in. The point I'm trying to make is sometimes you can get saturated in that. And one of the things that I learned to do was to kind of be careful to not oversaturate myself with the things going around the world, because something that's unique today that wasn't maybe years ago, especially before the internet. If you can, some of you who are old enough can remember the world before the internet, was we didn't immediately know what was going on in China and Japan and, in Russia and so forth. And it can be overwhelming. And I think that you have to kind of be careful how much of that stuff you consume. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's important. So it's interesting to see that anxiety disorders, they're the most common mental health conditions. Estimated over 300 million people worldwide deal with this. Now again, you said something that's really important. There's a difference between stress and anxiety. Everybody deals with stress, but you're making a distinction between stress and anxiety. What's that distinction?
So, anxiety is a mental condition. It's a mental. Stress is worry, is temporary, it's a reaction to something external. So, for example, I have a test tomorrow. I haven't studied. I feel anxious. I feel stressed. At work, I have so many things to do with so little time. That is the stress. Eventually, that is going to be when my exam is done. I should see a relief of that, whatever I was feeling is going to pass. At work, so many people live day by day, but it gets to the time that you feel some kind of relief. Anxiety is different. In the DMS is the book that we use for the mental health conditions and disorders. In one of the conditions, or one of the indicators, it has, in order to beat the anxiety, it has to be 2 weeks, 14 days to 15 days, feeling the same almost every day, or mostly the time, without any specific reason. In other words, I don't have what to worry for, but I'm worried. So that is a very specific. So when people say I have anxiety, we go by that. Okay, in the last 2 weeks, 14 days. Tell me, it's almost every day, mostly a day, and there is not a reason, a logical reason to feel that way. That's when it's
And
one
that's
of
when it
the
becomes a
indicators.
disorder.
That's when it's gonna be.
Now, I'm using that word, by the way. Let's just make sure everybody understands. What do you mean? Like let's say, because I know that I have my own definition of disorder, but what is technically what would be a disorder?
It's kind of like an illness. You have diabetes. So for mental health, it's gonna be that kind of like disease, if you will, but it's gonna be a disorder. Something that is not working properly or the way that you should be normally.
So it interrupts your life. It
Yes,
has an
it
impact
has
on your
impact,
life.
yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of consistent with what I'm thinking. And talking about anxiety and kind of some of the things that you deal with, and kind of like what you were describing, I think of this cartoon that you and I saw. It's called Inside Out, right? Especially the newest one, Inside Out 2. And the young girl that's the central character in that movie, that's the main character that's introduced now as she's going into high school, and she has all of these anxieties. And I thought it was a really good display of these are some of the common issues that can lead, because that's her world now. And I want people to understand this, especially parents out there. We're really quick to go, oh, that's not a big deal, or when I was young, I dealt with big. And we tend to minimize other people's issues. And that's the worst thing, in my opinion, that you can do, because, somebody might say, well, I've experienced far worse. Well, great, that's fine. But for them, that's their world. So if you have a young child, and let's say they're in the second grade and they're being bullied, for them, it might as well be David and Goliath. Or if you're having like, for example, this girl, Riley, in Inside Out 2, and she's trying to make new friends, and this idea of wanting to fit in by girls, that's a huge deal for her, because to be left out. And then what do you hear consistently, especially from that little orange character, anxiety, is like, well, what if this and what if that, especially whenever in the back of her brain, and joy and anxiety are going back and forth. But what if this happens and they don't like her, or what if this and she doesn't have any friends, and I think that's something that we have to understand, that each person is dealing with their own challenges. And I think that we, as humans, we want to be accepted. We want to be loved. We don't want to go around not being approved or accepted. It could be by our parents, it could be by our friends, neighbors, and so forth, coworkers. And so, even if you're the most introverted person, we all have this. I think it's an innate human desire to be accepted by our peers and those around us, to be approved and to seem acceptable to others. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Would that be correct? Okay.
Yes.
Well, you're the expert, so that's why I
Well,
want to ask
yes.
you.
So let me tell you. We all gonna be anxious. We all have the same chemicals in the same parts in our brain. The amygdala, which is the in charge of the anxiety. We all gonna have it, right? So when people come and they wanted to, to be able to, I don't want it to have anxiety. It's kind of like I don't want to be able to think. You can't. It's your personality. It's knowing there's gonna be some people that they are different personalities. There's people that they are more sociable and outgoing. There are some people that they are more quiet. So, and in a way, it's like that with anxiety. So the goal for anything is to be able to control the anxiety. Being able to regulate your emotions, being able to say, okay, this is something that I'm not gonna get rid. God, give it that to me in my brain. Now, what can I do in my control to be able to not live in that fear?
Yeah.
So that is going to be the goal. Unfortunately, medication is going to just suppress those symptoms. It's going to be there. But so the right way is not to think that, I want to get right. I want it to be cured, because it's not going to happen.
Yeah, so medication is going to suppress those conditions, but not remove them,
Symptoms,
right?
yes.
So, and I think something that's important to know is, like you said, there's people who are outgoing, like you and I. We've been married almost 30 years now, and I'm the outgoing one. If you haven't figured that out, I'm the one. You always say I could just talk to a tree, and we go on vacation, and I'm making friends everywhere, right? I'm talking to everybody, and you're more of the withdrawn, more quiet type. But yet, let me tell you something. Don't think that those who are more naturally outgoing and sociable have less anxiety. In fact, I would say it's probably even the opposite. A lot of times, the people who are the most outgoing, the ones who are most sociable, oftentimes are dealing sometimes with more of that, because many times those people who are more sociable, they're more emotionally aware, and they're more acutely aware of others' behaviors. Mm-hmm. So sometimes just a strange reaction or a look. And again, going back to that whole the movie for Inside Out 2, she just happens to look at one of her friend's reactions, and already in her brain she's like, okay, what does that mean? And a lot of times we can be hypersensitive, more sensitive than the standard person. So don't make the mistake of thinking that if you're just naturally outgoing, that your anxiety is not an issue. It may be actually the opposite.
Yes.
So now here's an interesting stat. I want to get your take on it. Okay. Did you know that women are twice as likely to experience anxiety than men? Mm-hmm. Now, I found that to be like that's completely shocked me. I did not know that. Now, why is that? Or in your opinion, why do you think that is? Why do you think that women tend to be almost twice as likely to deal with anxiety than men?
Yeah. So go back. That question needs to go back to what is the cause of anxiety. It's so many, but in women specifically, hormones. That is thyroid. There's a lot of physical internal conditions that it could affect the way that, the mood of, especially. I know that depression is one of the biggest, women, especially after having a baby, We even have that disorder in postpartum depression. So we have a lot of, now it's a chemical. Something happened within a woman's hormones imbalance, and that is going to trigger something else, the cortisol, and then it gets back to, that's why it's one of the reasons.
And so what's the answer? Is it medication, doctor?
And it's going to be dependent on it. So if you have an anxiety and you are able to manage to go to work, to be and living a normal life, having friends and going, that is going to be okay, come to psychotherapy and trying to do it. But if you go to the point that there's some people that they really get this. They can even talk. I have clients, they can even talk in public. They can even put a foot outside. So in that circumstance, in that instance, you need to go to the doctor and help.
Okay.
And so biblical counseling sees medication as a way of, help too. So think about it. You broke your leg few years ago. What did you do?
Yeah, went to the doctor.
The doctor, but then what do you do to walk? You need to have crutches, or you have to have some kind of help. You knew that that's not going to heal, but that's going to help you.
Yeah.
Right? So that is the stand of medication.
Yeah. And now this is an interesting take because you have more of the professional psychotherapeutic background, right? Now I have a pastoral counseling background, right? So I come from it from a pastoral, but I'm also I think I come to this question from an anthropological background too, socio-cultural background, right? And so here's another take that I take from it from my end. Yes, I can see how chemical imbalances and hormones for women can contribute to them being more likely, right? But you talked about how anxiety, it was kind of necessary to think about the what ifs, especially as a survival instinct.
Mm-hmm.
Well, think about this. In the ancient days, the men, when they gathered together, were task-oriented. They had a job to do. They had to go hunt. They had to go, work the fields. They had to go do whatever, go fishing and collect food for the family, do whatever. Many times the women in those times played more of a domestic role. And because of that, they were with the children. And so they were naturally more prone to be considerate of those around them. They had to be more aware of, is my child, and a lot of mothers will understand this. When your child cries, you can kind of distinguish, okay, that is a cry of being sleepy and grumpy, or that's a cry of being hungry, or, oh no, that's a cry that they're in pain. So they're more sensitive. Men, not so much. But women, because they were in domestic situations and households and settings, they had to learn to work together. What I'm saying is, historically and from a human history perspective, men were task-oriented, whereas in many situations, women were more in social settings with social goals. And me personally, I think that contributes to that. I think it's more than just hormonal. I think that women can be, for example, more sensitive to their friends and what they think of them and so forth. Because you just think of the conversations. Women are going to talk about their friends and their work settings very differently than men. Men, they don't give it too much thought.
Yeah.
We don't care,
a
And
lot of our society, the culture, what expectations you have and especially, what women should look like, and if I don't look like that, it can bring me some insecurities and some, so yeah, definitely.
yeah. So I think it's I think it contributes a lot because just like you said, what a woman should look like. Imagine, and it's kind of unfair because this culture expects women to look a certain way and to dress a certain way. And so there's this pressure that may not necessarily be on men.
On men.
And so I think that we need to be aware of those things. And I think from a biblical perspective, I think that God addresses that. And I'm thinking of Matthew chapter 6, verses 25 to 34. It's if those of you out there, if you're dealing with some issues on anxiety and you would like to put like a little marker in your Bible where to deal with anxiety, Matthew chapter 6, 25 to 34, Jesus talks about anxiety. And he says, starting in verse 25, do not be anxious about your life. Don't have anxiety about your life, what you will eat or drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. All of these things, he says, if God feeds the birds and the clothes, and he clothes the flowers of the field, then how much more will he take care of you that are worth much more? So Jesus is saying, don't worry about these things because God's going to provide for you. So don't worry about those things. Verse 27, notice these verses. Verse 27, it says, which of you by being anxious can add a single hour to their span of life? Now that's a profound statement. He's saying, worrying about it isn't going to change anything. You have no control over the future. And so how can you add anything? How can you change anything? Verse 34, therefore do not be anxious about tomorrow. Talking about the future. Again, that's the battle of anxiety. It's about the future. For tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. So what I think Jesus is teaching us here is that anxiety stems from our struggles with the future. And he's saying, worry about today. You're going to miss today because you're worried about tomorrow. And so I think that from a biblical perspective, God knows us better than anyone. And so I want any of you out there who are dealing with anxiety to know that, and this is very, very important, the Bible is much more than just about leading you to Christ so you can be saved. It's a manual for how to live. It teaches you about how to handle your finances. It teaches us about parenting. It teaches us about anxiety and depression. It is a manual of how to live our life. And if you would be willing to devote yourself to it or to apply it into your life, I think that there would be a lot of fruit that would come from that.
Yes, definitely. The base of the foundation of biblical counseling is about Paul when he talks about that we need to make every thought captive to Christ, and renewing our mind. So there's so many psychological, science-based theories that goes hand in hand with what Paul was talking about, renewing our mind. So if you wanted to change something in you, it has to start right here with your thoughts, And because so many experts agree that what it really causes anxiety and stress is the thinking, what it's called the rumination. The over and over.
The overthinking.
So it's not a thought. A thought comes to your mind, and you don't have control over what are you gonna. But it's when you start dwelling in thinking and what if and well, but if this happened, and then what is gonna do, and that is what causes anxiety. So in this case, something very a visual that I always have for my clients is a circle, right? And it's like, out of all the worries, what do you have control over? Put it inside that circle. And they start listing, well, it's just me. When they finish, end up like, it's just you. And it's okay. So as a humans, recognizing that everything else besides ourselves, we don't have control. We don't have control of the past, the future, even our spouses, our kids, we don't have control. We might say yes, but at the end of the day, when I used to work at school, I will hear the parents, have a good day, behave. What do the kids go? Go and misbehave. They're going to do whatever they want. You don't have control of people or changing, and it's not your job. And so many times people get anxious about the outcome because in their mind they want an outcome to come according to what your expectations, but you don't have control over. So it's okay to recognize this is how I feel, but switching to I don't have control, but God does. And help me to be okay, help me to be at peace. And when my beautiful daughter was starting to drive, consistently worry about, and I use that circle. Do I have control? No, I don't. Lord, just go with her, be with her, help me to be peace. And that was my mental gym rep over and over until finally I was able to trust God that it really. The only thing that I'm going to be doing is inducing some pain in myself just by thinking and worrying because I don't have control.
Yeah.
So instead of switching, recognizing that you don't have control, it's not for you, giving it to God and asking God to give you that peace.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, that's profound. That's a profound and important. It's so simple yet so difficult sometimes and profound, right? Because it is that simple. I mean, as parents, we can give advice. We can say, hey, you need to make sure, you always wear your seatbelt, or you make sure you don't speed and blah, blah, blah. For the people that we care about, we want to, and I think it's a lot of times as parents, we want to control our kids. We do so, I think, because we love them and we want to protect them. But at the end of the day, we got to trust them. And I think, let me just give you a scripture passage that exemplifies this. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6. It says, train a child up in the way that they should go, and when he is old, or when they are older, they will not turn from it. So what's God basically saying there in that one proverb? And this is why I stress that the scriptures can really help us with our anxiety. He's saying, do your job. Train them in the way they should go. Do your duty. It's not like God is saying, don't worry about anything. Don't do your responsibility. He's saying, but do what you're accountable for, and then trust me with it. Now, does that mean that everything's going to be okay? No. You and I, we both know that there families who've lost their children. You and I know that you may not get that job. Something bad may and probably will happen because that's life. But worrying about it, again, going back to Matthew chapter 6, doesn't help with it because it's going to hurt already and it's going to be difficult already to go through it. But if you suffer through it before and after, now you're just in constant suffering and constant sorrow. So I think that's an important teaching that you have. And so I think that Jesus is teaching us here that anxiety is a battle with the future that we have no control over. So, all right, so now let's talk about the second phrase. Let's talk about depression and the phrase, if only. And if anxiety is struggling with the future, then depression in many ways, I argue, is struggling with the past. And when people look back and say, if only this, if only that, if only I had been there, if only I would have done things differently, and it leads to that regret or sorrow and depression. And in many ways, I have seen people who are trapped in their past and they're not living in the moment because they can't let go. A breakup with a significant other, a bitter divorce. There are things like this that are the loss of a loved one, maybe who is really, these are real issues that I know you have to deal with. But now, let me ask you this question, because you made a point about anxiety saying, listen, there's a difference between stress and anxiety, right? Stress are the external factors, but anxiety is a state of being. It's the internal, right? The mindset. Would you say it's the same thing with depression? Because is there a difference between what is the difference between being sad and depressed? And I know a lot of people say, oh, I'm depressed. Well, what happened? Well, my dog died. Well, I mean, you should be sad, right? So what is the difference there? How do we delineate, or how do we define the difference between being sad and being depressed?
Okay. So once again, being sad is an external reaction. Something happens to me, therefore I feeling like this. Right? There's a logical reason that you can go back and, like you said, so many people, when they lost a loved one, they have to go through that. It's normal. I mean, I have clients that they lost their only child. How can you not feel depressed and your life is going to change forever?
Yeah.
Even research shows that when somebody died, like very close to you, your brain changes. You rewire in the brain. The chemistry of your brain completely changed forever. And I remember my sister Tita saying, I'm never going to be the same after
she
death.
lost her son.
So forever you change. Your mindset. I have so many clients that they describe the life before and after. So going back to the sad usually is temporary again. Something happened. I get in a breakup, right? So it's for time, but eventually you're gonna get over. Eventually you're gonna go back and to trying to live. So that is circumstantial. Yes, you are in depression, grieving, when somebody, a loved one died. Yes, you're going to be in that stage of depression, but it's circumstantial. It's not a condition. It's not something, that, and sometimes they were going to need some assistance, help, depending how was the relationship in their lives. If they don't have any life support, I'm thinking about a client that she lives in Germany and doesn't have anybody, but only her son, and he died. So it's going to be probably more hard for her to deal with because she doesn't have any of that system support. So the main difference is the sad is a reaction, your body reactions to external circumstances.
Yeah,
and
into
it's
real
temporary.
and
Yes, and it's temporary usually. Depression is a mind. It's a mindset. It's something within you. Once again, we go back to the definition and the indicators. The MS, it has to be at least 2 weeks, almost every day, all day, without not a logical reason.
Yeah, so like if somebody comes and say, hey, Mrs. Valdez, I'm coming to you for therapy because I'm dealing with depression. You might say, okay, well, what happened? Well, my dog died, or I broke up. Or you might say, okay, listen, there's a logical reason for the way you feel, right? Versus, why do you feel that way? What happened? Nothing. Everything's fine, but I still feel depressed.
Yes.
Now it's a mindset that you have to deal with. And I know you've mentioned this before. I think you said that in other countries that they make sure that there are certain factors that are being checked off before they clinically diagnose somebody with
Yes.
depression, right?
Yes.
Talk about that.
Well, especially in England, psychiatrists, because right here in United States, if you feel there's two ways that you can be diagnosed. Your primary care doctor, which is just a general doctor, he can prescribe medication because he's a doctor, so he can prescribe you. The other way is going with a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist is a health or a brain mind doctor that he will prescribe you. He will diagnose you and prescribe your medication here in the United States. Well, in England, they have some criteria that any doctor, psychiatrist or primary doctor can't and will not prescribe medication until the patient has done something to show that he's doing some kind of physical activity. Why? Because there is a correlation. I have a specific client. He's 19 years old, and he came to me because he was depressed. And when I start asking about his life, well, tell me a little bit about your life. What is your lifestyle? He stay up all night because he can't sleep, and his phone playing video games. About 4 o'clock, he sleeps all the way until 2 or 3 o'clock. He orders something, usually a fast food, comes, he stays in his room. He doesn't get, it's very dark. He doesn't work. He doesn't go to school. Think about it. And I was thinking when he's describing his life, it's like even a healthy person under those conditions is going to feel that way.
Yeah, you're talking about brain dead activity for countless hours, lack of sleep because you're doing those practices, lack of healthy eating, and a lack of anaerobic exercise or just getting around or getting out.
And the most important thing, you don't have a reason to get up. You don't have a reason to go take a shower because why? What are you going to do?
Well,
he doesn't have anything.
Well, think about COVID. What did COVID do? I'm telling you guys right now, I don't think there's enough research yet. And I don't know, maybe now we're starting to kind of get some of the data back, but there was a serious psychological trauma that occurred on a national basis by locking people up for about 2 years.
Not national, worldwide.
Worldwide, yeah, you're right.
Yes.
That was a crisis of more than just an epidemic. Yeah, obviously the disease and all of that, but the psychological impact upon people. How many divorces and separations, child abuse. If you look at those statistics, you'll see, for example, suicide. You'll see alcohol abuse, drug abuse.
Yes.
All of these things spiked because people didn't know what to do being locked up. They were like in cages.
Yes. And I think when you don't have a reason to get up, we were made to be useful, to have a purpose. If it's get up and go to work, go to school, do something, even go for a chore, right? But this young generation, that they don't work, they don't go to school, they don't have a reason, And his mom was telling me about this client that he didn't shower for a week,
Wow.
And all those kind of things. The depression, unfortunately, is kind of like a snowball. It starts very small, and it's growing until finally it takes control of you, And so it's but helps. Research helps that if they do some kind of physical activity, get up and get some kind of vitamin D, that sun, and trying to find at least one or two things that they need to do, I've been seeing a lot of even videos about even making your bed, feel accomplished. That at the end of the day, you really feel like, okay, what did I do today? Oh,
Yeah, Jordan Peterson talks about that. He talks about if you want to change your life, start with immediate things around you. Clean up your room. Just clean your room, and immediately you're going to see around you organization rather than clutter. And that's going to have a positive psychological impact on you. Like you said, make your bed, right? Do those things. That is so important to like, for example, reading. Just get a book that you would like and just engage in these things. So it's important. And you said something that's really, I think, really, really important. We were made for a purpose. And if you're living your life in a way that's without purpose, and I think a lot of the young people out there right now, oh, I just game all the time. Yeah, it's fun, right? But there's no ultimate purpose, and you know it.
It's not fulfillment.
It's not fulfillment. Now, does the Bible teach us that? Absolutely. Remember, I'm an advocate that the scriptures are more than just to save you, to offer you salvation, which obviously is the prime thing, right? But to enhance every aspect of your life. To speak on that, I think of Jeremiah 29:11-13. For I know the plans I have for you. There's a purpose, he says, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. There's a purpose for you, right? It says, then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. So he's beckoning to the people out there. He's saying, if you come find me, you'll find purpose in me. Now, this is very important. Again, I'm obviously a pastor, right, and a theologian. Is it possible for you to find some sort of purpose apart from God? You can, but it's going to be, in my opinion, a shallow and meaningless purpose.
Temporary.
Again, temporary. You're going to feel like objectively, I find purpose in this or that. But when you have an active relationship with God, and you find that when you know God, then you're going to finally know yourself. Because those who don't know God really don't know themselves, because he's your creator, right? So to me, that's a scripture passage that identifies that we find hope and purpose. And what's amazing is it's in the book of Jeremiah. What is Jeremiah the prophet known as? He's known as the weeping prophet. He's known as the one who battled depression, because God gave him a huge, very heavy, sorrowful message to preach to Israel, because he was the one tasked with letting the people know that because of their brokenness, because of their wickedness, because of their rebellion, God was going to allow them to be taken in slavery, taken and overcome by the Babylonian army. And so that's an important one. So to me, it's important. 264 million suffer worldwide with depression. And we see lots of famous celebrities. I think of Robin Williams, real famous comedian, and that's what's so sad. He so many years he brought joy to others, but yet inwardly he suffered with this, and he eventually took his life.
That is one of characteristics. People that they are the comedians, that they are always laughing and making jokes. It's kind of like unconscious having that, that they have to compensate. Feeling, that internal.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Robin Williams was beloved. He was. I remember him in Aladdin. He was the genie. But he made so many people laugh. But you're right. It's like inwardly they were battling these things. And speaking of comedians, another one is Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey has talked openly about his battle with depression. And this is one of the things. I was watching a video of him this week, and he said, and this is something that he spoke about, and I want to get your thoughts. He said, our mind and our thoughts are responsible for most of the causes of our sadness and depression. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. It's like I said earlier, depression, anxiety it's when we start ruminating and start in our mind.
Yeah.
Now, of course, every person is different. Some of them, depression, it is genetic. So if somebody in your family have that gene or whatever they want to call, it's going to be, an highly indicator, or that you're gonna be prompt to start suffering with depression. Now, once again, depression is kind of like anxiety. You're never gonna find the cure. You're never gonna get rid, but it's to know how to manage it to the point that I feel this way, but I need to still to survive. I need to start doing my daily job or routines. That I need to in exercise, in the eating, diet, the sleeping, all those kind of things it just reduced. It's been proved that it reduced like 50% symptoms.
Yeah. It's not about finding a cure. It's about finding a cope and learning to walk with and deal with these things. Philippians chapter 4, verses 8 through 9. Again, this is something that I want to stress as a pastor. Whenever I deal with people who are dealing with these kinds of thoughts, and like Jim Carrey said, it's the battlefield of the mind, right? I want everybody to hear this. you should not allow just every thought to come into your mind. Like in other words, when there's a thought that you feel is unhealthy, cast it away. Put a filter. And what I find a lot of times with people who are suffering from depression, they allow unfiltered every possible idea and thought to come into their mind. And it's kind of like, the faucet. You've got a little filter, and it's there to make sure that harmful things don't come through. You need to have a filter and make sure that the things that come into your mind don't enter into your heart. Not everything is good for you. So Philippians chapter 4, verses 8 through 9. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, all of these things, positive things, right? Think about such things. Put your mind to these things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. That's the NIV version. And what it's saying to us is, don't allow just every random thought to take root in your heart. You're going to have what's called those intrusive thoughts, right? And some of those things you got to go, you know what? No. And this is something that you and I do, we've done in our marriage. When you say something or when I say something that is questionable, what do we always say?
Where does that thought come from?
Yeah, where does that come from? Is that from you or is that from God? And sometimes I go, I think that's from me. And so it's important to check ourselves. And I think that to take Jim Carrey's advice is to say, hey, be careful, because our mind and our thoughts, they are responsible for most of that.
Usually for depression, a very effective technique that we use is what we call the activation behavior or behavior activation. So what does that mean? That you have to work inside out. I don't feel like getting out. I don't feel like that. It is very interesting because think about it. Psychology says that up to 90% of our decisions we make based in that moment, here and now. I don't feel like working out. So what do? I don't work out. Oh, I feel like go get a hamburger. What do? I drive and get a hamburger, right? So all the decisions we made it in the moment. So for depression, it has to be like behavior activation, so you have to work like, I'm gonna go work out because I want to feel after, feel well, feel better.
Even
after.
if I don't want to immediately do it,
immediately.
I know that this is what's good for me.
And it's 90%, it's going to make you. Because think about it. It happens to me. Sometimes I don't want to work out. But the feeling that I got after, oh my gosh, it's so good. It's accomplishment. It's feeling.
Doing what's right for you, even if in the moment. It's self-discipline.
Yes.
It's self-discipline saying, I'm going to do what's best for me. And I heard this one time, and I agree with it 100%. Self-discipline is the highest form of self-love. No, not self-control, self-love. What it means is when I tell myself no, I'm actually loving myself more than the normal person. So self-control is the ability to say, you know what, I love myself to say no to that burger or something. And I'm not saying that you can't eat cheeseburger, and that's not what you're saying. But what you're saying is, you know what, I'm going to make myself turn off the video game. I'm going to make myself go get some sleep, and I'm going to make myself drink water instead of just a bunch of Cokes or energy drinks. It's the highest form of self-love. I love myself, and I'm going to love myself by treating myself in the way that I should. Again, going back to the scriptures, honor your bodies as the temples of the Lord, to take care of ourselves, to do those things. And so I really want to encourage you out there, because one of the biggest problems with depression is that they're oftentimes the major contributors to substance abuse, alcohol and drug abuse. Because what you find, and in my years in ministry, I hear people say, I just didn't want to feel that way anymore. And what they went to was an immediate, temporary fix, but coming out of it, they created much more problems.
Yes.
So, and let me share a story with you guys. Dealing with depression, and especially the extreme side of depression, suicide. We already talked about Robin Williams. His name was Chris Cornell. Chris Cornell was one of my favorite singers. He was, man, a fantastic artist. In my opinion, I think if you were to say who has the greatest musical voice of all time, I would say Chris Cornell. When I was in when we were young, we were just married and everything. I mean, I was listening to him all the time. He was the lead singer for Soundgarden and then later Audio Slave. Fantastic, singer. He struggled with depression, and that depression led to substance abuse and addiction. He eventually ended up committing suicide in 2017. And there was an interview with Men's Health that had been done several years before. And the person who interviewed him brought that interview out. And he said, man, if I knew then what I know now. And he interviewed Chris Cornell, and Chris Cornell talked openly about his depression. And this is what he said. He said, quote, he said, I was depressed for a long time. If you're depressed long enough, it's almost a comfort, a state of mind you've made peace with because you've been in it so long. But then he said something that really I had to meditate about. He said, it's a very selfish world. And I started thinking about it. Why did Chris say that? Like, I get the first part, that sometimes depression can be almost like you're so comfortable there because that's where you're at, right? But he said it's a very selfish world. And I realized what he was saying. He was saying it's something you have to deal with because nobody cares. It's a very selfish world. I think that's what he meant.
And I would say a lot of people is that they don't care, but they don't know how to help. And think about it, if somebody, my loved ones, the only thing that I can do is just show empathy and listen, because what else can I do?
Yeah.
And now, for that person with depression, it's, start doing something even when they don't feel like, I have clients that are like, no, well, what about if you just go outside for 5 minutes? I don't want, to go for 30 or an hour. What about if you just do these things? It's because a lot of people, I think that comes back, with the enemy, kind of like isolate. People with depression, one of the classic characteristics is sleeping. They want to sleep. It's physical as well.
Yeah, it has an effect on you physically.
Yes,
Yeah.
a burden, it's a heaviness, so you just want to be asleep. Because what? When you are sleeping, you're not thinking about anything.
Yeah.
So you want it to be...
But isn't it almost like turning away from it, but
Yes.
knowing that it's going to still be there, right?
Yes.
Waiting for you.
Yes.
And that doing that thing you may not want to do may not necessarily just be limited to physical activity. Well, what's the thing you may not want to do? Maybe you don't want to talk about it. Right? Maybe you don't
Right.
want to pick up the phone and call your brother, your cousin, your father, your mother, and talk about it. And so the doing the things that you may not want to do may not be limited to physical activity. Physical activity, going outside, getting some sun, doing some activity, working out, great. But man, talking about it, praying about it, and I'll give you a personal example. I was having, and you probably remember this was a while back. I was having a really, really difficult month. There was a lot of attacks, and how many of you can relate, man? When it rains, it pours. Sometimes it's like everything hits you, and sometimes, man, you don't know what to do. You know what I've done, and my daughter does this too, and I actually find peace knowing that she's learned this from me, or maybe she just picked that up on her own. I don't know, but I go for a drive, put on my music, and I spend time with God. I'm telling you guys that's healthy. And so you know what I did? Mm-hmm. If you remember that day, where did I drive to go get pizza? You remember?
Austin?
So I live in San Antonio, and I drove all the way to Austin. There's a great pizza place there, by the way. And it's called Home Slice Pizza. There you go, free promotion. Home Slice Pizza, amazing pizza. I was in San Antonio, and I got home, and I was really, really depressed. Or you could even say maybe stressed out. Let's say I wasn't, because it really wasn't
Sadness.
depression. I was sad because there were so many bad things that had happened. And I just needed to spend time with the Lord. And so I got in my truck, and I drove all the way to Austin to sit down and eat some pizza, and then drove all the way back. But it wasn't about the pizza. It was about the drive there and the drive back, where I felt like God saying, you and I need to spend some time alone.
And that's what we call coping skills. Mm-hmm. You find something that you can cope that help you, healthy, and you do it over and over. Because something about depression is that, when we talk and we were social, that's energy. Depressed people, they don't have that energy.
Yeah.
And it's a burden, and that's why the isolation and being alone feels so good.
Yeah. Yeah, and and let me tell you, for some of you out there, uh, maybe that's what you need. You need to spend time alone. And I'm going to tell you something about depression, because we talked about how women are twice as likely, right, to suffer from anxiety. There are a lot of men out there that are suffering from this. They wake up early in the morning, they work all day to take care of their families, and they suffer in silence. And I'm just going to tell you all the truth. If a woman posts something on social media, oh, this terrible thing happened to me, I'm sad or whatever, man, there are going to be a lot of people, hey, we love you, hang in there, empathy. But a lot of times if a man does it, he doesn't get the same love and care and attention. I think maybe that's what Chris Cornell was talking about. It's a very selfish world, especially I think for men. You got ladies, especially wives and mothers, man, show some love to your men out there. Husbands and fathers, they do a lot, and they deserve that. I'll tell you this, like you and I have been together for almost 30 years. If you just come up to me, and you do this pretty often, you just come up and just give me a kiss or give me a hug. I bought that thing for you for the plants. I don't know what you call it. It's a little light stand. I texted you. I was like, hey, check this out on TikTok. Do you like it? She's like, yeah, okay. And I ordered it, right? And I put it together, and you just came up and you gave me a hug, and you says, thank you for doing that for me. Ladies, you'll be surprised. Your husband, a lot of times there's a lot of women that are complaining that their husband doesn't do what they want them to do or isn't who they want them to be. But some of that may be within your influence. Like, how often do you encourage them? How oftentimes do you thank them when they do the right thing? And a lot of times all they hear is criticism, and they're pounded every day by the world. And if they would just get a little bit of love, a little bit of appreciation, man, that'll go a long ways, especially from the women in their lives. And so daughters, wives, mothers, man, speak those good things into your children, into your husbands, into the men in your life.
Yes. And I think something else, what not to do. I have a lot of my clients that sometimes they come, the loved one, when they start talking about depression and immediately, you don't have a reason. Why do you feel that way? Don't think that way. There's not a reason. Look, you're so blessed. And
It's invalidating their feelings.
And they make them feel worse. Because they're right. Yeah, I don't have a reason. Look, I'm so blessed. I'm this, and now I feel in this way. So definitely, knowing that we can fix it, but sometimes just show empathy.
Yeah. Let me share a couple of verses with you guys out there. If you're struggling with depression, Psalm 34:18, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted. Notice there's no qualifications there. It's just a promise that David says. If you're brokenhearted and you're walking with the Lord and you're brokenhearted, He's near you. And that's one of the things that I love about the God that we worship. He is a God who suffers with us. He's not just a God who understands our suffering. He's a God who suffers with us. Who better displayed than in the cross, right, by our Lord. Psalm 40, verses 1 through 3. I'm going to read to you the NIV version. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and He heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit. And sometimes depression feels like a slimy pit. Why is that important? A slimy pit? It's because you're stuck. And if it's slimy, you can't get out, right? A slimy pit. Out of the mud and mire. And yet the Lord set my feet on a rock, and He gave me a firm place to stand. And He put a new song in my mouth and a hymn of praise to our God. And many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in Him. And so it's this promise that if you trust in the Lord, especially in your darkest times, He will not only lift you up, and He will put you on that foundation where you can really put both feet strongly, which is in His Word and in His truth and in His person and His being. But it's also a promise He's to put a new song in your mouth. And this is really important, guys. I talk about the Bible a lot, right? But we don't worship the Bible. We worship God. We don't have a relationship with the Bible. The Bible points us to God. It's the map to God. Don't make the mistake, and this is really, really important, because I've met people like this. It's not about just memorizing scriptures. I met this one young lady who I was counseling, and she said, no, Pastor, I already know those. Look, I've got this little thing, whatever. Listen, when's the last time you prayed? I mean, you had a real deep felt conversation with Him. Oh, it's been some time. See, it's called bibliolatry. It's basically the worship of the Bible, and basically it's like their mantras. Like they might as well like be those little motivational things that you know put on your calendars. Listen, this is not just motivational quotes, guys. This is the living, active Word of God. It's living and active. It has real effects on your life, but it points you to the God that we know. In other words, it's not about just memorizing the scriptures. It's about knowing and having a relationship with the true God. A real relationship with Him will result in real change. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of words on a page if you don't know the Lord. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
So, if you're struggling with anxiety, if you're struggling with depression, you're hearing this today, I hope that this message and all the expertise that my wife shared is helpful. But talk to somebody. Seek help. You're not meant, and you were never meant to suffer in silence. Where two or three are gathered together, there He is. Right? What does the wisdom of Solomon tell us? Tells us that two are better than one, because when one falls, there the other one is to lift them up. And so I really want to encourage you out there, if you're struggling with these things, I hope that some of this helped you to understand, but more importantly, that it encourages you to seek help. Any last thoughts or ideas? I'll leave it to you.
No, just the whole idea that, that for some reason God allowed that, we all gonna have, it's kind of like anxiety and depression. Sometimes we're gonna have the ability to feel, but He didn't intend it for us to be all the time, 100% of the time. We have to do what is in our control, and anxiety and depression, do what is in your control and let God do His part, the prayer and everything. But because I see so many times clients that, I'm praying and I'm going, and when I ask them about, okay, what did you did this week? Nothing, so that is also, we have to do our part and allow God to do His part.
Yeah, amen. And I'll leave you with this, because something that you said is really important. Sometimes dealing with stress, it's part of life. And a lot of times we're like, Lord, get me out of this. Well, rather pray, Lord, give me strength in this. Let me glorify you in the midst of this. So a lot of times we're so quick to ask the Lord to get us out of the uncomfortable things. But it's in those places where God is going to refine us and where we have an opportunity to grow in our faith. And so seek less comfort and seek more character, and learning to be faithful in the midst of those things. And as Ecclesiastes tells us, there's a season to be, rejoicing and happy and merry and singing. And there are seasons in which, sometimes we're going to be sorrowful and deal with things. But in all those things, we have to demonstrate our trust and faith.
Amen.
So thanks again for your wisdom. And guys, this is my blessing. I get to hear and speak. You and I, we're kind of becoming empty nesters. So you and I, we get to go have dinner and like we have these kinds of conversations. I'm really blessed. Now, the only thing is she's always diagnosing me. And I'm like, stop diagnosing me. I already know I'm crazy. But I'm really blessed to have you as a partner in my ministry and in my life.
You help me a lot, because there's a lot of times that my clients ask me something and I tell them, I'm not an expert, but I live with a theologian and a PhD, a doctor in my house. But let me ask, and then I will get back to you.
That's Dr. Professor Patrick T. No, I'm just joking.
And then usually they come like, what do your husband say? What do your husband say? So I rely to them.
Well, any wisdom I have comes from the Lord. The wisdom that we have is not our own. And so praise God for that. Folks, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. We are so grateful for our audience out there. Y'all been so supportive. We've seen a tremendous growth in this podcast, and the good stuff is going to keep coming. So make sure you subscribe. And until next time, may God bless you. May Jesus guide you in your life, and may His Spirit sustain you. God bless you.
God bless you.